Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MCJ Report number 183. That's right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the broadcast. I hope that no matter where you are or what you're doing, that you are having a lovely evening. So go ahead and share the broadcast, folks. Get the word out there. The algorithms out in the world of social media not really doing us too many favors these days, so therefore it all depends on you. That's right, it depends on you to get the word out there, so that would be very much appreciated if you were to just go ahead and give the broadcast a share. Now I can see that there are a bunch of you tuning in right now. Just looking up some of the comments, I can see a whole lot of regular people there, so I'd like to welcome everybody to the broadcast. Hope that you've all had a really wonderful week. And I think what we'll just do is we'll get this show underway, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll start getting to it because we do have quite a lot on the agenda this evening. Alrighty, so we are starting here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so if you are in Victoria, or maybe more specifically Melbourne, this Saturday 10 a.m. at the Alfred Hospital, I encourage you to come down and attend. The gathering is standing with Vicki, and that's right, the Melbourne mum who was disgracefully denied entry to Victoria's heart transplant waiting list. And Vicki needs this surgery. She has a failing heart. She was declined entry because of her vaccination status. And the very sad reality is that Vicki needs this surgery or she will die. Of course, we are most definitely disgusted by the silence of the government and the silence of the Health Minister, Mary-Ann Thomas, and of course along with the Premier Daniel Andrews for standing by in silence, because of course they would rather stand by idle as opposed to, I suppose, taking a back step on their mandate and vision for Victoria and the future. Now, what makes this most sad is that Vicki's most fundamental human right, which is the right to life, has been arbitrarily taken from her by a government that is unfit for purpose, unfit for governing. Okay, so the right to life, this is a right given to us by God. It's not a right granted by government. So come on down on Saturday, 10 a.m. out the front of the Alfred. Show your support and let's stand in solidarity with Vicki, because today it's Vicki, tomorrow it's us. So Vicki may as well be our mum, our sister, our daughter. She's a Victorian, she's one of us. And as the saying goes, all for one and one for all. Alrighty, moving along here. All right, if you'd like to support the show, ladies and gentlemen, the good news is that you can do so from $5 per month. That's right. So we've just rolled out our new MCJ memberships. The perks of becoming a member: you'll receive additional content, members-only emails, invitations to members-only events, and things like that. Of course, if you can't afford to do so, please do not. MCJ Report will always be free and available to anybody who values the content. But if you would like to support the show, and if you see the value in MCJ Report, and if you think that the work that I produce is of value and importance to the public, then please consider becoming a member, because every bit helps, and it will indeed ensure the longevity of MCJ Report so that I can keep doing what I do. And in addition to that, MCJ Report now has a staff member, so we are growing, but of course we would like to very much take our operation to the next level. So that's mcjreport.com. If you'd like to become a member, just click on the membership tab, and our staff will be in touch with you very, very soon. Alrighty, now let's get stuck into some headlines, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Let me just make sure that we're connected okay before I go any further. Okay, it appears that Facebook is connected, YouTube is connected, and Rumble is connected as well. All right, so everything is underway and everything is looking pretty good. Alrighty, who here saw this? Woody Harrelson. Now, Woody was always one of my favorite actors and starred in one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Money Train. Raise your hand if you're aware of the movie Money Train. Great movie. Wesley Snipes, Woody Harrelson. I love it. They set off with a great goal and having a great ambition. I don't want to spoil the movie, but if you like action and if you like movies about the little guy sort of rising up, then go out and check out Money Train. Now, Woody, very, very rare for people in Hollywood and rare for actors who have a massive profile. He's actually spoken out against the COVID policies and mandates on film sets. But more specifically, he's spoken up for the staff who work on the film sets, which is something very nice to see. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention, because more often than not, we see celebrities just banging on the same old drum of government, reinforcing the mandates of the state and the government objectives and directives. Very rarely do we see celebrities actually putting their neck out there in order to stand up for the common man and woman. So we of course love to call out the celebrities who have gotten on board with the state, but when those actually put themselves in the firing line to speak against the state, I think it's very worthy of a mention. So Woody Harrelson, good on you, and would love to have you on MCJ Report sometime. Alrighty, Victoria announces shortened duck hunting season amid review of increasingly contested practice. Well, who exactly is the practice contested by, ladies and gentlemen? Is it contested by the majority of Victorians, or is it contested by a small group of people who mostly live in the inner suburban suburbs of Melbourne, who like to spend their weekends sipping soy lattes? What do you think? Who exactly is contesting duck hunting? Well, the article says here that the, quote, State's Outdoor Recreation Minister, Sonia Kilkenny, who, by the way, is the member for Carrum, a very nice beachside suburb in the southeastern metropolitan region of Melbourne. And I'm sure that Sonia most definitely understands the ins and outs of hunting and is very much connected with the hunting community. Catch my sarcasm. She said that she acknowledged the issue of duck hunting in Victoria has become increasingly contested. Yeah, maybe in Carlton, maybe in Northcote, maybe in Brunswick, maybe in Collingwood, Fitzroy, those types of suburbs, but I really don't think it's overly contested anywhere else. She went on to say that the, quote, deeply held views on the subject will give the government scope to establish a Legislative Council Select Committee to examine recreational native bird hunting in Victoria. And of course, the Animal Justice Party, they are most definitely very outraged that hunting still exists. And if they had it their way, nobody would eat meat ever. That's right. But I think the Victorians who are probably most disappointed right now would have to be those who are members and those who voted for shooters, fishers, and farmers. That's right. Now, what a lot of these particular Victorians may not necessarily be aware of is that in the past state election and the one before it, shooters, fishers and farmers in many instances actually gave their preferences to the Labor Party. That's right, it was part of the preference deal that was formulated, shooters, fishers being in that Glen Jury network, of course. Now, it's also important to point out that it is indeed no secret, it is no secret whatsoever, that the Victorian Labor Party, along with the Animal Justice Party and the Socialist Left, they would very much like to completely do away with all hunting. That's right, they don't necessarily want Victorians to have the capability to go out and to get their own food. They would love to do away with the practice. Now, shooters, fishers and farmers, they understand this. They're not stupid. They have been observing the Labor Party here in Victoria for a very long time. So why on earth would shooters, fishers be giving their preferences to the Labor Party in so many instances? I think that it's really time that we as Victorians became a lot more savvy in regards to politics, who we vote for, and what those of whom we vote for are actually doing with our votes when push comes to shove. All right, moving on to some federal politics here, ladies and gentlemen. So what we've got here right now is a bill that is before the Senate called the Treasury Laws Amendment Consumer Data Right Bill from 2022. So this is following a pretty familiar trend that we're seeing in Australia. So at the core of this bill is effectively the centralisation of Australians' data in relation to consumer products that include services but are not limited to banking and finance, property, insurance, utilities, gas, water, electricity, and other types of subscription services. So effectively at the core of this bill is a system whereby Australians can either act on their own behalf or appoint somebody to act on their behalf for the purpose of transferring their services to different providers, whether it's, again, finance, insurance, etc., accessing their data, or doing it themselves, or having a third party act on their behalf. Now, of course, it all sounds very well and good. It all sounds very convenient, as does any type of system that the government puts forward that ultimately results in the centralization of our data. But of course, we need to be asking ourselves the question, do we consider it to be in the best interests of our security, our privacy, for all of our information to be stored in one place in relation to the services that we use in life and the utilities that we pay for? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Is this too much data to be facilitated by the government? Last week on MCJ Report, we spoke about the health amendment and the implementation of a central database referred to as, quote, the system, which will effectively consolidate all of Victorians' health and medical data in one presumably government-operated database. And we see more of the same at a federal level. So, ladies and gentlemen, the one thing that I'd like you all to be very aware of is anytime the government comes out and says they are proposing information to make Australians' lives easier or more convenient, etc., you always really need to ask questions. You need to say, well, what's in it for the government? It's all very good for the government to explain what's in it for me, and that's what any good salesperson would do. But what's in it for the government? What's in it for the stakeholders? Who are the private companies that have contracted with the government? What is the dollar value of the contracts? Will our data be secure? Will our data at some point down the track be privatised and sold off, just like what the Victorian state government did to Vic Roads? What happens if there's a cyber attack? What happens if the government potentially misuses our data for reasons outside of the stated intended reason? What do we do then? You know, there's an old wisdom in life, ladies and gentlemen, and it goes something to the effect of you never put all your eggs in the one basket, right? Obviously, if you drop your basket, there goes all your eggs. So I think it's much smarter to actually have our data decentralized. Yes, it's not quite as convenient, and if you move home, you'll be making a few different phone calls. But by having our data in multiple locations, it actually provides us with a great deal of protection, because if our data is compromised on one front, at least we can secure our data on other fronts. Whereas if our data is all in one place and there is some sort of infiltration, some sort of attack, then everything is gone. That's right. You may as well just pack up your bags and leave. So I'll be looking at this bill a little bit more, ladies and gentlemen, in the coming weeks, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on all governments here in Australia, both federal, state and territory, in order to monitor any developments moving forward. Alrighty, let me just make sure that we're connected, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it looks like we are connected pretty good. I'm just double checking because sometimes I'm not totally sure what happens when I go live. But I can see that it is running more or less smoothly, and I can see that Rumble is indeed online. So by the way, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, if there's any problems with the broadcast, Rumble has actually been really, really good lately. So if you'd prefer to watch on Rumble, head on over to www.rumble.com/user/Morgan C. Jonas, and you can join in the action over there, ladies and gentlemen. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the first main segment of the show. So let me just go back for a second. All right. It never stops, does it, ladies and gentlemen? All right, so Sack Dan Andrews Party spokesman Tosh Jake Finnegan elected to Colac Otway Shy Council. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed not all that surprising, but it raises a lot of questions in regards to the integrity of our electoral process and the types of characters that are able to actually contest in elections. So why am I saying this? Why am I making this bold assertion right here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was indeed Glenn Drury, the very well-known election fixer, who staked claim to the so-called party referred to as the Sack Dan Andrews Party for the purpose of harvesting votes into the Glenn Drury network. That's right. And a lot of those votes, and there were tens of thousands of votes that were poured into this network, went straight back to the Labor Party and also to the socialist left. Now, Tosh Jake Finnegan was actually the spokesperson for the Sack Dan Andrews Restore Democracy fraudulent party. Now, we need to be asking ourselves the question here in Victoria: how is it that these fraudulent parties are able to exist? How come they're not shut down? Surely this deceptive behavior is at odds with our Electoral Act in regards to, not deceiving the voter and things like that. But supposedly it's fine. Supposedly people like Glenn Drury can come in, set up these parties, and you can have Tosh Jake Finnegan head the party up as the spokesperson, just take all these votes from an unassuming Victorian public who thought they were actually voting for a party to get rid of Dan, only to shovel those votes effectively straight back to Dan. Now, I've got a little clip here of Glenn Drury boasting about the setting up of the so-called Sack Dan Andrews Party. Take a look.
So let me tell you about Sack Dan Andrews, and I'm bringing you into confidence here. It's one of mine, and it was conceived when Aiden. I predicted what would happen with Aiden months ago. So you've got to put something in place, to defend yourself, and then attack. And that's what I did. I looked all over their social media. I could have called it the Pro-Jet Trails Party. I could have called it the Port Arthur Conspiracy. I could have called it the Wacko Crazy Lunatics Party, but I didn't. Every other post was Sack Dan Andrews, Sack Dan Andrews, Sack Dan Andrews. We're going to form the Sack Dan Andrews Party.
So Glenn Drury, of course, very, very proud of what he was able to achieve there, and I think they make a pretty interesting team. And of course, the footage there, courtesy of the Angry Victorians Party, and Glenn Drury went on to explain further in that clip that Tosh is indeed an ally. And, at the time, we were communicating with parties, of course, in the lead up to the Victorian state election, and Tosh actually declared and said that, no, we're not dealing with Drury, and we're in this to get rid of Dan Andrews. Now, this character Tosh is actually pretty interesting. So, Tosh was implicated in the Daniel Andrews red shirt scandal, investigated, arrested, and then came out as a self-styled whistleblower, only in the end to, partner up with Glenn Drury in order to participate in what one could only describe as a vote harvesting operation to ultimately help Dan Andrews. So where do you think this is all heading, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, Glenn Jury, he's just taken off into the sunset. He's just rode off on his horse. That's right, I presume back to Sydney, where he resides on his private yacht, probably feeling not too great about the outcome of the election. He was hoping for a bigger payday. His payday was probably cut in half. But when are these people going to be held accountable, ladies and gentlemen? Put your thoughts in the comments, but I hardly see how it's appropriate for somebody who headed up what you can describe as a fraudulent party to then go on and be elected to local council. I mean, if somebody is willing to be involved in such extreme election manipulation, surely somebody like that should be barred from office. But then again, in the state of Victoria, as we like to say, ignorance is strength. Alrighty, so Queensland Police to hire 500 foreign recruits. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on here? Alrighty, so what do we have here? Queensland is launching a global recruitment drive for hundreds of police officers over the next 5 years as the state's police minister acknowledges difficulties attracting new recruits. The recruits will complete a fast-tracked training course of 3 to 4 months and then will be stationed across Queensland. All right, so giving us lots of confidence that these police officers will be trained very well, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? So the question we need to be asking ourselves here, first of all, is why is Queensland Police seeking to engage in an international recruitment operation? Well, the reason given by the police and the Queensland Police Minister is that supposedly Queenslanders simply don't want to join the police. They said, well, we've tried and we're not able to get the numbers. So therefore, they decided the best course of action would be to recruit 500 foreign police officers every single year for the foreseeable future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say straight off the bat that I am not buying it. I do not believe the excuse adds up. I don't know exactly what the motivation is. Now, for sure, there's lots of people in Queensland and all over Australia who are feeling very put off by the police as a result of the antics employed by the police during COVID-19. But in saying that, there's still plenty of people out there who don't particularly see a problem with how the police acted, and there is, without any shadow of a doubt, no shortage of Australians who are just willing and ready to join the police. So what exactly is going on here? I mean, as I said, it just doesn't make sense. When we look at the state of Queensland, we're looking at a population of 5,300,000 people. Are you honestly telling me that with the government and all its resources and tools at its disposal is not able to launch some type of marketing campaign for the objective of seeking recruitment domestically? Think about the resources and marketing capability the government has at its disposal. They could, few $1,000, of course I'd spend a lot more, put together some sort of exciting recruitment video advertisement, put it out on YouTube, Facebook. They would get people most definitely applying. So I am so not buying that the Queensland government needs to actually go overseas. So there's the police minister there in Queensland. His name's Mark Ryan. He's definitely got a few questions to answer, but I doubt he'll be doing anything like that. There's the police commissioner there of Queensland, Katrina Carroll. Now, she's not going to be able to offer any insight because at the end of the day, she's a political appointment and will ultimately adhere to and be obedient to the government. So she will not go against the government in any way, shape or form. Now, there's a whole bunch of problems I see with this whole drive to bring in foreigners into our police forces. I'm going to run through these problems with you. I don't think this can possibly result in anything good. So problem number one, recruits may be more driven by wages, thus more prone to blind compliance and therefore less focused on community justice. Problem number two, Queenslanders may lose out on jobs. As I mentioned before, I have no doubt there's plenty of Queenslanders that would actually like to join the police. They just need the right YouTube marketing video to pop up in their newsfeed, and then they'll be clicking on buttons and saying, hey, I'm going to go and become a police officer. Problem number three, foreign recruitment may set a countrywide precedent. That's right. So if Queensland can do it, why not the ACT? Why not Tasmania? Why not Victoria? I'm sure Dan Andrews would like that very much, actually, because it really comes down to if somebody overseas moves to Australia for a job, say to become a police officer, they're doing it for the money because they need a job. They're not doing it because they have some sort of commitment to the local community or upholding justice for Australians. No, they're looking for a paycheck. And anyone who's solely looking for a paycheck, they're going to be compliant, obedient, and willing to do things that other people would not do. And that's really, really problematic, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? All right, what else do we have here? Problem number 4. Foreign recruits won't be familiar with the lay of the land, all right? So we want people who are familiar with our environment, our culture, how things work over here, social dynamics, all of that. These recruits, they won't have any of that. Problem number 5 is, of course, the government is clearly not being transparent, all right? Am not buying it. Am not buying this reason. Well, we looked, but there's no one there. I mean, honestly, folks, the minister right here, and once again, his name is Mark Ryan, he's got a lot of questions to answer. So if I was speaking to this bloke right here, Mark, I'd ask him straight up. I'd say, all right, what measures did Queensland Police undertake in order to boost recruitment? What measures were they, and to what extent were those measures deployed? Just a really simple question, because it's one thing for the minister and the commissioner to say, hey, we tried, we couldn't find anyone. But what did they do, and what was the result? You see, I don't think they'll actually come clean about it, because all recruitment takes, it doesn't matter what job it is a little bit of thinking outside of the square, some intelligent marketing, and away you go. So if anyone's in Queensland and you want to contact this guy to ask him questions or maybe to express some concerns, this is him right there. His name's Mark Ryan, looking very smug there in that photo. So he's at 1 William Street, Brisbane, Queensland, 4000. Phone number is 073035 8300, and his email address there is police@ministerial.qld.gov.au. Okay, so once again, that's police@ministerial.qld.gov.au. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the state of play over there in Queensland. So if you're from Queensland, I think that you should be most definitely kicking up a big stink about this. It's just not on, and it has trouble written all over it. All right, moving along here, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Melbourne magistrate Rob Starry drops charges against acting Sergeant Beau Barrett. Now, this was in relation to what many of us highly presumed was an assault that took place in 2021 at a protest whereby a protester was slammed to the ground by a police officer. His head smashed to the ground. He was knocked out, and the police officer was subsequently suspended from work and charged with assault. But recently, and this has just happened, a Melbourne magistrate, Rob Starry, has said, no, it's not assault, and the sergeant in question has been exonerated of his charges. Now, I've got the video here to remind you of what took place, but before I play it, please be advised that the footage is traumatic. Okay, so viewer discretion is advised. It's very violent, and if you don't want to see that sort of stuff, then turn the video off now.
Surprise, he's back. Oh!
Alright, so that's the victim right there, ladies and gentlemen. His name's Daniel Peterson English. So first of all, Daniel, if you're listening, my heart goes out to you. And I think I speak on behalf of so many people when I say that so many of us, we don't want to see our fellow Victorians getting assaulted by anyone. And just because somebody happens to wear a blue uniform, it does not give them the right to assault members of the public, even if by doing so, they are propelling the objectives of the state. So yeah, Daniel, my heart goes out to you. Just a horrible miscarriage of justice. I hope that you're okay. And this is just typical of the state of play here in Victoria. Alrighty, so let's take a bit of a look at what's going on here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, first of all, the first question I'd like to ask you is, do you think the footage was assault? Do you think that was an assault that was carried out? Well, to understand that, look no further than the Victorian Crimes Act of 1958. So, assault here is defined by the direct or indirect application of force by a person to the body of or to the clothing or equipment worn by another person, where the application of force is A, without lawful excuse, and B, with intent to inflict or being reckless as to the infliction of bodily injury, pain, discomfort, damage, insult, or deprivation of liberty, and results in the infliction of any such consequence, whether or not the consequence inflicted is the consequence intended or foreseen. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Nowhere in the Crimes Act, in the definition, does it state that, well, none of this applies if you happen to be wearing a blue uniform. It doesn't state that. Assault is assault is assault. It doesn't matter who you are or what your reason for doing it is. Assault is illegal, and people who commit assault are criminals and should be punished. But that hasn't happened, ladies and gentlemen. So why hasn't it happened? Well, let me read to you here. Magistrate Rob Starry today dismissed those charges, noting crowds around the station had been escalating. All right, he said, quote, there is a long period in which his behavior had escalated. Okay, which is, by the way, that's no excuse for somebody assaulting somebody else. Goes on to say, quote, Mr. Peterson English's behavior can only be described as threatening and abusive, in which he taunted police continuously. Well, that's very subjective for a magistrate, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? Described as threatening and abusive. According to who? According to the police officer who had 50 of his colleagues all around him with riot gear. According to this Melbourne magistrate, goes on to say, after reviewing the evidence throughout the hearing, Magistrate Starry found that while the arrest was not by the book, not by the book, that's one way of putting it. Another way of putting it was what we just witnessed was a brutal, sadistic assault on an innocent man. He said that it couldn't be proved that acting Sergeant Barrett's actions involved criminal intent, and a jury could not find him guilty. Very, very bold words there by the Melbourne magistrate, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? So let's see. That's him right there. So that's the magistrate Rob Starry. In some circles, he's actually referred to as the, quote, terrorist lawyer. That's right, because he has a background in defense, and he has, in fact, defended a very, very serious convicted terrorist in the past. And, well, I dare say that the actions of the Sergeant Barrett is reminiscent of terrorism. And I know that's a bold thing to say, but in order for me to make this assertion, one simply needs to just understand the basics of how terrorism is defined, which is generally an act of violence that is motivated by some type of political or ideological objective. And I dare say the events that transpired in Victoria over the past 3 years were indeed motivated by politics and ideology, and those politics and ideology were brutally enforced by the Victoria Police. So I guess some things don't change for certain individuals, and in the case of this bloke right here, Rob, I mean, Rob, honestly, can you honestly face the Victorian public and say that when you made this decision that you were acting without bias? Can you honestly, in the depths of your soul, say that you made a decision based on fairness? Can you? A Melbourne man was smashed to the ground by another man, right, who happened to be wearing a blue uniform, concussed. The victim might still have head trauma. And all this magistrate can say is that it can't be proved that there was criminal intent. It looks pretty damn obvious to me, ladies and gentlemen. So, this is the police minister, by the way, Anthony Carbine. Don't count on him making any type of statement. He's just there to say yes, boss, to Daniel Andrews. And this is right here is the police officer who, what's his name? Bo Barrett, that's right. This bloke right here, he can't believe he got so lucky. That's right. He can't believe he got so lucky. He thought he was done. He thought that he was going to be out of the job, never ever to return. But actually, it's his lucky day. I dare say that Beau was able to receive by some sort of good fortune a very sympathetic magistrate. And it's very frightening to think that this particular individual here, Beau, who has the rank of sergeant, was able to carry out this extreme act of assault and will ultimately be able to put his uniform back on and potentially go and hurt somebody else. It boggles the mind, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? And it sets such a dangerous precedent. So what can we take from this magistrate's decision, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I think about it and I think, well, does this mean that members of the police can act in excessively violent manners if it is for the objective of furthering the agenda of the state? All right, because I can guarantee you, if you or I did to somebody in the street what Sergeant Beau Barrett did to that innocent Victorian, you or I would definitely be charged and convicted and would probably go to jail. The only difference is that you and I were not wearing a blue uniform and we were not enforcing the nonsensical policies of a corrupt government. So I guess my conclusion from this, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously I'm very heartbroken for the victim in this situation. Very, very heartbroken. We don't like to see that happen to anyone, and that, of course, is Mr. Peterson English. I consider there's been a tremendous miscarriage of justice. People who assault other people should feel the full force of the law, and what this really brings to light is that here in Victoria, the rule of law does not apply equally to everyone. There's certain rules for some people who happen to belong to a certain class, and other rules for other people. Now, this is so highly hypocritical of the Victorian government. So we've got the government obviously here in Victoria, and the judiciary is part of the government. And the ethos in Victoria is definitely equality, right? Everywhere you go in relation to government, it's all about equality and fairness and equal opportunities for all. But what it most definitely has been proven here is that life isn't equal for all in Victoria, ladies and gentlemen, and the government will most definitely grant privileges and powers to those in its ranks and strip those privileges from other people. And if a certain member of the public happens to be in a class, or say in a category the government considers to be disruptive or a nuisance or at odds with the objectives of the state, well, that person will simply be treated differently. And that is, of course, because in the state of Victoria, right, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. All right, so yeah, pretty bad stuff. Anyway, I'm just going to see if we're connected here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just hop on to the chat. There's Lawns, there's Betty, there's Sharon. It's great to see you guys. I hope that everyone's having a really great evening. I can see lots of people on Rumble right now, so I'm very happy that each and every one of you are there. If you'd like to ask me any questions, then feel free to do so, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that pop up in the chat. I'm not sure if the Facebook chat comments are working. I'm going to try and log back into that. So yeah, don't be shy if you've got any questions. I'll stick around and answer some questions, that sort of thing. Izzy says that you think they want to try and scare people from protesting. Well, they can try all they want. Honestly, the government brought out the air wing, the mounted unit, public order response, critical incident response team, but the people showed that they just actually kept protesting in much larger numbers. So I think the intimidation tactics, actually all it does is it really motivates everyday people to get out of their houses and to go and take a stand. So it actually has the opposite effect. There's Lisa saying that guy looks like he could be a Roman soldier. There's Robin there. How you going? It's great to see you. There's Conductress. Great that you're back. Let me know where you tuned in from. There's Purple there. It's great that you're here. There's Sharon, a regular on MCJ Report. Super happy to see you guys. Feel free to ask any questions. You can stand. So it actually has the in the chat box, and I'll try and answer a few before I get going. Lisa says they're up to something, most definitely. There's Georgia, how you going? John says it's about initiating foreign occupation. Well, yeah, I don't, as I said before, I don't believe the excuse from the Queensland government that apparently they can't find people. I mean, honestly, you kidding me? You got 5,300,000 people in a state. The government has an unlimited marketing budget for recruitment purposes, and they can't put together a compelling video, put it out on YouTube, Facebook, etc. Nah, not buying it. That's right. I'm accusing the Queensland government of point blank lying to the people. That's right, I said it. I said it, and I don't regret it. How about that? Marco says the fallacy is that justice is blind. Well, there is no justice. All right, we're clearly living in a society where there's different sets of rules for different people. All right? Like, not everyone is equal under the eyes of the law in Australia. That's just the truth. Robin says you felt depressed that he got off. Don't be depressed, because we just keep on fighting and just have faith, because in the end, good overcomes evil, and in the end, most definitely, the will of the people will reign victorious. And there's Betty Smith there. And there's Dana, how you going? Going back to Rumble. Purple says that you're here, how you going? Somebody said, can the decision of the magistrate be appealed? It can, but it needs to go up the chain. So the magistrate, right, the former, how do I say it? So he defended a guy who was ultimately convicted of terrorism. But honestly, guys, what we saw in Flinders Street Station, how is that not terrorism? The definition of terrorism, right? Violence or some type of extreme act designed to incite fear with the objective of bringing about some sort of political aim, political means, ideological. So I'm just going to say it. The act that took place in Flinders Street Station, when that police officer brutally assaulted that Victorian man, that was an act of terrorism. Let's see. Unhinged hotheads with guns, yeah. Yeah, and by the way, the firearms legislation and laws are always becoming tighter and tighter by the day, guys. So keep an eye on that as well. I'll be covering that. Conductor says, can you address what the agenda looks like? Well, first of all, I just want to say that maybe this will piss some people off a little bit, but I do see some people online who I think engage in unnecessary fear-mongering from, say, let's just say my side of politics, our side of politics, the pro-freedom side of politics. I don't like to see that either. There are some so-called influencers out there, I'm not going to name them, but it just appears that every single video they make, they're trying to instill the fear of God into their following. I don't subscribe to that. We need to keep an open mind. We know that governments throughout history are capable of such tremendous acts of evil, but we also know that throughout history, people come together, rise up, and create a better future for their children and future generations. So ultimately, the future depends on everyday people getting together, uniting, fighting, and doing what's decent in order to protect the country, protect the future, and to protect each other. So we've seen around the world, for instance, there have been certain adaptations of travel restrictions where bollards have gone up on roads and citizens have actually come out and removed those bollards, cut them off, gotten out the chainsaw, gotten rid of them, said, no, we're not dealing with that. So one thing that I keep in mind, and this is what keeps me going, is I will never give up faith in humanity. That's right. I'll never give up faith in my fellow Australians. I love my Australian brothers and sisters. I love my country. And something that really irks me is when people say, well, why do you even try? People are stupid. Don't even bother. right? And I refuse to adopt that line of thinking. I don't like it. I think it's wrong. I think the right mentality we need to have is, well, we should be trying to connect with, communicate with, and unite with all people, no matter who they are, where they're from, or what the basis is for their ideological outlooks on life, right? Because the second you take some sort of position such as, well, everyone's stupid, so why would you even try? Well, you've just cut off such a broad cohort of the population, and it's just no recipe for success. So obviously the government is rolling out what's the right word? So the government is very interested in digitizing every aspect of our lives. Okay, so that's demonstrated, of course, through the smart cities, through the centralized databases for health, the digital ID, the collating of our financial information, our salary, our assets, things like that. Okay, so that most definitely is going ahead, and I think at the core of it is definitely we see a merger of state and corporate. So big tech working hand in hand with government, big pharma working hand in hand with government. And it is a bit concerning to see where it's all going, but at the end of the day, the people are smart, so you just need to think outside of the square. Prepare for bad economic times. That could be happening. We have every reason to think that due to the constant increases in interest rates that we may see the property market crash and further inflation and increases to the cost of living. So what do? You don't sit at home in a corner crying. You say, all right, well, how am I going to safeguard myself and my family? So the most obvious thing in my mind is start thinking outside of the square regarding your income. Think about ways to diversify your income. How can you make money on the side? Do you have a skill set that you're not utilizing? If so, how can you utilize it? Instead of, maybe sitting on the couch watching TV for X amount of hours a week, go and do some research. Find out, look, how can you apply your skills to maybe earn money on the side? How can you prepare? Maybe be a good idea to start becoming a bit more self-reliant, collecting your own water, learn hunting, go and hunt your own food, grow your own vegetables. There's certain measures that you can take to safeguard yourself against, potentially concerning trends in the economy. So, and if worst comes to worst, like absolute worst, there's actually still nothing to worry about, because the worst thing in the world is, in my opinion, to lose your dignity or to have somebody take your dignity from you. So by not complying with tyranny and not complying with senseless government directives that are inhumane, that seek to undermine our basic human decency, you'll never lose. You'll always retain who you are. You'll always retain your values, your belief system, your integrity. And if at the end you lose everything because of that, well, nothing matters more than keeping who you are and not bending over to bullies. Because if you do that, then you may have a good job and you may have lots of assets, but you would have sold your soul. And I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I would rather live in a shack in the middle of nowhere, but maintain my dignity, my decency, and my self-respect, than to sell out to a corrupt corporate government and have all the money in the world. Who here agrees with that? So, and if it gets really bad, then we'll do it side by side and we'll deal with that if it happens. So I'm pretty easygoing about most things, as you can see in that regard, because certain things in life are out of our control and we just have to do our best and roll with the punches. So that's my little motivational speech for today. And in the meantime, I'll just keep calling out the government. I'll keep poking the bear and see if the bear bites. That's my basic goal for now, ladies and gentlemen. There's DW Seeker. How you going? Oh, thanks, guys. Yeah, and if you'd like to support the show, and no pressure, all right, no pressure, only if you can afford to. I've got memberships, right, from $5 per month. So there's various perks. You get members-only emails, invitations to members-only events, things like that. And I will be making my way around Australia bit by bit. You can head on over to mcjreport.com /MCJ memberships. A lot of time goes into MCJ Report, so it's not as if I just press a button, go live. I spend hours upon hours doing the research, putting the information together. I do all my own graphic design, all my own video editing. I rehearse the whole show before I go live because I don't want to just go in fresh. I like to have a strong idea about what I want to talk about. It doesn't always come out the way that I'd like it, as most of you would probably recognize based on watching MCJ Report. But it is a lot of time, and I want to take it to a new level. So, of course, the show will always be free and available to anyone who wants to watch it. There's no obligation to contribute anything. I said that from the start, and I'll always say it. But to keep the show around and for it to actually build and to grow, and MCJ Report does have a staff member on the back end managing all the emails and all that sort of stuff, it does, of course, require resources. So, again, if you'd like to get on board with that, it's you can do so from just $5 a month, and you'll get a welcome email, and there's a whole bunch of cool sort of things that we do as well. So, all right. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's probably just about it for today. I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in. I'm going to cut out the segments of the show and upload them during the week, but I won't be too far away at all times. And if you can make it to the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne on Saturday, come down 10 a.m. We're going to stand with our Victorian sister, Vicki. All right, Vicki, we love her. She's a fellow Victorian. She's one of us. She may as well be our sister. Okay, we're in this together. And let's go and stand against the absolute inhumanity that has materialized in Victoria. All right, guys, I'm gonna clock off now. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to MCJ Report, and I'll catch you on the show next week. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.